what's up, guys? This is TS Football Broadcast. I am back here to recap Saturday's XFL games. Starting off, we got the LA Wildcats at the New York Guardians. Before the game, I had some questions. Will the Wildcats hold momentum from last week, and how will they travel across the country? As for the Guardians, will they fucking do anything? Because the Guardians, to this point, have been atrocious. Even their win is like 1 for 10 on third down. So I'm like, okay, they won, but they were god awful and they beat the Vipers. It was not good. So now, for the Wildcats, it's kind of, hey, I'm watching for Josh Johnson, Trey McBride. Now on defense, I'm watching for Jack Toko. For the Guardians, I was kind of like, okay, I'm watching for Darius Victor, Joe Horn Jr., and Colby Pearson on offense. On defense, I was like, okay, Jamar Summers and Bruni Rotimi Jr. are going to make the difference. The Guardians started off by returning to the 30. Louis Perez was starting, so I didn't know what to expect. I was expecting less turnovers. I was right. Started off with a quick handoff to Tim Cook for 4 yards. They got stuffed on first down. Perez was sacked on third down. 3 and out. Short punt to the LA 39. Then the Wildcats, not to be outdone, run it for 4 on first down. They're stuffed on second. Johnson is sacked on third down. 3 and out, deep punt to the 29. These drives look similar? Yeah, they're the exact same drive pretty much, except for different field position. It was, not the most exciting start to the game offensively. Then Perez throws a screen pass to Joe Horn for a first down. Then they have a high snap on third down, which somehow doesn't end up in a loss as Darius Victor is good and converts it. And then he just plows people over for a first down. And then Perez throws a dumb screen to Victor on the preceding play, which should have been picked because the screen was stupid. He should have just thrown it out of bounds. He wasn't going to get anything out of that. He should have realized that. And then Perez goes on to almost be picked by Springs on an overthrow, which is a pretty bad overthrow too. But the drive ends up ending in a 51-yard field goal by McCrane. 3-0 Guardians. I'm like, how are the Wildcats going to respond? Well, let me tell you. Josh Johnson throws it straight to Barnes. Then he throws it to Smallwood on third two for 26 yards. And then another view to Smallwood for a first. And then Mubu stuffs the Wildcats on third down. Again, later in the drive, Josh Johnson sneaks it for a first on fourth down. Then he ends up paying Trey McBride wide open in the end zone for a touchdown. But then Trevon Henry bats down the 2-point conversion throw. It's 6-3 Wildcats. And the first quarter is ultimately going to hold out to be 6-3 Wildcats. Then Perez conjures some escapability, scrambles around, throws it to a tight end for a first down. Then proceeds to be almost intercepted on a screen pass by Devin Taylor, who I think really should have gotten the pick. Then he hits Jake Powell for 20, and then he hits not Corey Redding for a first down. It is Redding, it's just not Corey Redding. Then he slightly overthrows it on first to Powell, and then who bounces it up, and it's almost picked. And then Marquise Williams checks in on third and goal. It fails, but it was a missed opportunity because the play call was brilliant because Perez was wide open. It was uncovered for a stretch. So if they'd gotten the playoff quick, Perez who ran it, he could have just gotten the touchdown right there. And it would have been a touchdown instead of a 23-yard chip shot field goal, which ended to be 6-6. And it's tied to this point. Then the Wildcats stall out. Then the Guardians get back on the field. Victor drops a ball. Bibbs has a really good run after catch. And the drive ultimately ends with Louis Perez lob for a touchdown. And then Marquise Williams pops in for a 2-point conversion, which worked, and it's 6-14 Guardians lead. And then the Wildcats half ends with a Josh Johnson overthrow on second, a Toby Johnson tip on third, and then a deep punt. Halftime, it is 14-6 Guardians lead. My questions are, Louis Perez the answer for the Guardians? Holy shit. And then I was like, okay, when's the Wildcats going to actually show up and get started? Yeah, I got to answer both these questions in the second half. Some yes, some no's. The Guardians started off by just mutilating the Wildcats punt return. They end up starting off terrible field position at the 14. Johnson ends up hitting McBride for a first down, and then he has a bad throw on out route, which is almost picked. So an out route's exceptionally easy to be picked off anyway because it's just a doing. And yes, I know I need to get video stuff so then I can just have like a line go up here and a line go up there. Pretty much that's an out route. So what ends up happening is the guy guarding. So let's say this is your receiver. This is guy guarding. This is wide receiver. He can run like that. He can jump it, and you're pretty much screwed unless he gets like a perfect throw off. And because of his bad throw, that wasn't happening. Then he ends up hitting Adonis Jennings for a first. Then he hits Trey McBride for a first. Then he misses Whitfield on a deep shot. Then there's a delay of game penalty. And then on the next third down, it is holding an unsportsmanlike conduct by SQ Henry. But then Gerald Owens doesn't like his teammate getting thrown under a bus so harshly. He sacks Johnson, again, second time during the game. He's completely unblocked. Add some penalties to that. They're sitting at 2nd and 30. They're pretty screwed. They do gain 10 yards on the next two plays, make it 4th and 10, which gets in Nick Novak's field goal range. He's against the wind, and then he proceeds to miss it on a Gerald Owens tip. So it was a miss / a tip. It was just blocked. So it was like, well, Novak could have kicked it better. Gerald Owens was being awesome. Wildcats at this point, in frustration, force a 3 and out on the Guardians. And then Johnson completely misses Smallwood, but gets a pass interference call on 4th and 2 from their own 27, which shifts the momentum to them, moves them downfield, big time. It's all this and that. They hits Whitfield for a touchdown. 2-point conversion is good to Smallwood. And that's 14-14. I'm sitting there thinking, all right, here's the Wildcats. They're up. They're ready to go. No. Perez has a wild miss. Paolo loses 2, and then the short throw isn't enough, and that's a 3 and out. So I'm still thinking that. Then Harris breaks off a big run, and then Johnson. This is where I'm like, oh, okay, this might not go so well. He has a throw. It's bounced up by, I think it was Jordan Smallwood. I can't remember who bounced up. I thought it was Jordan Smallwood who bounced it up. Like it's up, and then Jamar Summers got it. And it was a big return. And at this point, I'm like, okay, this isn't so good. Because it's not Josh Johnson's fault. It's just, yeah, it's his fault on the stat sheet, but it's not actually his fault. That wasn't very good. It was good for Jamar Summers, of course, who capitalized on a great opportunity. But for Johnson, it's just like, I feel some sympathy for him. And then Perez shows some great pocket awareness on the next drive. It's first down, or he throws a first down to Pearson. He was getting all sorts of pressure, and he just shows perfect pocket awareness there and gets it. Then Darius Victor broke big for a first down. And then they proceeded to have bad play calling, back-to-back throws for back-to-back sacks. Then McCray nails it. It's 17-14 Guardians. And then Josh Johnson heaves it to McBride. Trey McBride. Whitfield runs into a security guy on the next play. Ultimately, it ends up being a 45-yard field goal attempt. You guessed it, Nick Novak misses it. It's 17-14 Guardians. And then Tim Cook runs for a first, and Perez runs for 3. They were trying to throw on that play, but Perez was like, nope, I got to save your bad play calling. And then McKay has a big drop, and then the Wildcats get the ball back with some time left. They can't get down the field. Final play, 3 seconds left. It's a crazy foul play. There's like 20,000 shovel passes. There's some accidental forward passing. It ultimately ends up being a 17-14 Guardians victory. The Guardians were a lot better this week. No turnovers, and were more efficient on third down, and I think that's a big Luis Perez thing. I think the coach needed to run the ball more in the fourth quarter / second half in general. A better team would have taken advantage and beat them. Hell, the Wildcats, even though they never got in a groove offensively, their defense had some bad moments, also had a lot of good moments, despite their offense leaving them high and dry, and Nick Novak Nick Novak is the reason they lost the game. Like, 6 points. 6 points if he had made those field goals. They weren't, like, bombs either. It's like, okay, hit a 45-yard. Hit a 48-yard. It's like, 48 yards, it's like, against the wind. I'm like, 45 against the wind. It's like, it's a 3-yard difference, but I've done some kicking, so I'm like, you should make at least one of those if you're Nick Novak. Just not a good showing by Nick Novak. I mean, the Wildcats' offense wasn't in a groove either, but they kicked those field goals. It's all of a sudden a 20-17 game, and maybe it changes the outcome. I mean, maybe the freaking Wildcat or Guardians lose, or maybe the Guardians somehow still win, but I think Nick Novak costed them, but the offense did lead the defense high and dry for stretches. Now, here's some stats to back up whatever bullshit I just said. The Wildcats outgained the Guardians by 100 yards, 350 to 250. They had just as many first downs, almost 17 to 19. Here's the difference right here. The Wildcats went 2 for 12, which is 17% on third down, while the Guardians went 5 for 13, which is 38% on third down. Interestingly enough, the Guardians were actually worse in the red zone, going 1 for 3, which is 33%, and the Wildcats went 1 for 1 for 100%. The Guardians also outran them quite a bit. 122 rushing yards to 40, even though I was bitching about the Guardians not running it enough. They still should have ran more. Oh, holy crap, that's gross. Yeah, that's really gross. Okay, there we go. I'm feeling much better now. Sorry, guys, I had to take a second there. Ultimately, penalties. The Guardians, again, were penalty kings, having 100 yards worth of penalties, while the Wildcats only had 22. Nate Kading really did, or not Nate Kading, excuse me, other bad Chargers kicker. Nick Novak did cost them the game. 0 for 2 on field goals. That was the difference maker right there. The Wildcats defense, I mean, they did a solid job. I mean, 6 quarterback hits. I mean, they were getting sacks. I mean, the Guards had 8 quarterback hits, though, so it's like, well, yeah, it's a sad game. As for the Wildcats, who I also think should have ran out more maybe, even though even what they were doing was kind of working. Harris finished with 5 attempts for 25 yards, and that's the most anyone had during that game, so they really should have ran more. They only ran 13 times. Not enough for my taste. Josh Johnson, though, went 25 of 40 for 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. That was not his fault. So I think Josh Johnson statistically was solid, and from a game perspective, yeah, there's some screw-ups, but he wasn't terrible. It was like, well, he could have played better, but he also did enough where I think he should have ultimately won the game, given kind of what he was doing. I mean, he had no run game, and his kicker was just not good. Statistically, for the receivers, Trey McBride finished with 8 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. Jordan Smallwood finished with 5 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. And Blacknall had 1 reception, 42 yards, and guess what? A touchdown. Nothing else was really crazy, except for Vahi somehow having 0 receptions and -7 yards. That was the only thing I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting statistically. Defensively for the Wildcats, Gaz had half a sack, 1 quarterback hit, 1 TFL. Taylor, the Lord and Savior of them, had 1.5 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 tackles for a loss, and a pass defense. Brady had 0.5 sacks, 1 quarterback hit, 2 tackles for a loss. Roberts had 1 quarterback hit, half a sack, and a tackle for a loss. Wiley had 1 sack, 1 quarterback hit, 1 tackle for a loss. So statistically, they weren't awful. I think Nate Kading really did cost them, because if Nate Kading kicks those 2, or not Nate Kading, I keep saying Nate Kading, other bad Chargers kicker, excuse me, Nick Novak. If he had kicked those 2, it would have been a different game. As for the Guardians, 18, for Darius Victor, 18 attempts, 82 yards. For Tim Cook, it was 8 attempts, 32 yards. 82-32. That's easy to remember. Louis Perez went 18 of 26 for 150 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. The former AAF quarterback did not do bad in his first day. I thought there were some missed opportunities. I also think play calling could have been better for the Guardians, though. So I'm like, well, it evens out. As for receiving, there was 2 guys at 34 yards. Pearson had 5 receptions, 34 yards. Powell had 3 receptions, 34 yards. And the guy who caught the touchdown was McKay, who had 2 receptions for 12 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, it was overall an underwhelming day for the receiving core and the quarterback of the Guardians in terms of stats, although I think they played pretty good, but that's just me. Yeah, that might just be me. That is not just me. I think that's just a good team. Now, as for the Guardians, Owens, 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for a loss. He was an absolute monster. Oh, and a blocked kick. He was an absolute monster. I thought he played great. He was the best defensive player on the field in that game, and he definitely flexed it. Walker also chipped in a sack. He chipped in 2 quarterback hits and a tackle for a loss. So Walker was half of Jarrell Owens. Is pretty much the conclusion we can draw from that. Now let's get into the Seattle Dragons at the St. Louis Battlehawks. My question is before game. Does Seattle have an offense, and can they travel to the Dome and win? My questions for the Battlehawks. Can Jordan Ta'amu hold up against Steven Johnson and a stout defense? So the game started, there was a lot of mic glitching. Like, I don't know if that's just me, but there was a lot of mic glitches, and I found it rather unfortunate. It made the start of the game a little less good. XFL, please fix that. I don't like hearing mic glitches every time it's a Battlehawks home game, because Battlehawks are one of my favorite teams to watch. They're kind of my team. Once I get some money, guys, I'm probably going to start wearing Battlehawks gear, because I really like the Battlehawks. Matt Jones, Jordan Ta'amu, I mean, it's a good group. So you got players to watch out for. Jordan Ta'amu, Matt Jones, who else do I need to watch out for? Oh, Christian Michaels is a guy to watch out for, and Marquette King. All those were offense except for Marquette King, who's special teams. As for the Dragons, watch out for Steven Johnson, watch out for Austin Podol. And yeah, I forgot Pearson out for the Battlehawks. How could I do that? I'm not doing so hot today mentally, guys. I want to start this game off. Matt Jones was tackled for a loss on first. Ta'amu ran for 1 on second down, and then it was just they went 3 and out, 4th and 13, and they had to punt in their own end zone. And then the Dragons almost royally fucked up by fumbling, but they recovered it and ended up on their own on the 50 somehow. So good for them. And then Trey Williams proceeds to have a short run. Williams has a short run on 3rd and 5, and then Silvers overthrows. This was a really bad thing, and I wrote a lot of notes about this. Silvers, 3rd down, 3rd and 5. So Williams short run on 2nd down, 3rd and 5. Silvers, he overthrows his receiver. So bad there. He was open. They could have caught it. Number 2 bad thing. He's scrambling out of the pocket. He's got a run lane wide open. Like if he had just ran, he would have gotten the first down. So instead, 3 and out. It was an excellent punt. So they got penalized on the first punt, which was inside the 10. And then they did bear Brock Miller. It just was excellent. And he gets inside the 5. And then Jordan Ta'amu went on some play actioning for a first down to Marcus Lucas, who ended up having multiple catches on the drive. Ta'amu had a quarterback draw for 14 yards, just for another first down. He got hit on a throw to Washington, which was almost picked by Clark. That was a little scary to watch, but I was like, okay, yeah, I can see how you could almost get picked. And then he ends up throwing a wide open touchdown to Augustus. I don't think I said his name right. And then, it's wide open to Augustus. And then he throws a TD to Pearsonell. And then the 2-point try hit. He gets it to Luce. He gets hit, and then he gets it to Marcus Lucas. So it's 8-0 Battlehawks. Wow, I really need to work on my notes, guys. They're kind of hard to read sometimes. Holy crap. And then Silvers is almost picked on, almost sack. Their drive ultimately ends in our punt. I'm just sitting here like, man, Brand Silvers is freaking terrible. And then Christian Michaels has a really good cut, gets a first down. And then Tamu decides, I'm going to run too. And then he throws a dime to LaDainian Washington for a first down. The drive stalls out. It ends up being a 48-yard field goal for Russolino. And that's 11-0 Battlehawks. And then Keith Farrow is not happy. He breaks off a 17-yard run for Seattle, and that ends the quarter. End of the first, it's 11-0 Battlehawks. I love the weird score. I'm like, okay, I almost want to see the game stay this way because I love the weird score. And then third down, or not third down, Seattle on the preceding drive. Seattle moves it a little bit, and then Keenan Reynolds falls on a third down. They just didn't execute there. Brad Silvers, the throw wasn't great, and then Keenan Reynolds just fell over like a bumbling fool. It's not his fault. I mean, it kind of is, but kind of isn't. It's like, I don't know. I wasn't there. I was watching, but I wasn't there, so I can't be like, for sure, yeah, there's this blade of grass sticking up and he tripped on it. I can't be there and make that call. But it ultimately ended up being a 41-yard field goal off the upright for the Dragons, and it's 3-11 Battlehawks lead. And then Keith Ford slams the line for a first down. It ultimately ends up in a punt. Poto misses a catch. It's another punt. And then Tamu proceeds to be almost picked off by Santos Ramirez. It was really close. He should have been picked off. And then he runs it for a couple. And then they were supposed to punt. And then King gets hit for roughing the kicker. And then it's the first down for the Battlehawks, and Battlehawks just run away with it. I mean, Brad Riley has a big catch for a first down. Steven Johnson and his Magic Billy tried to deflect a touchdown. It ultimately ends up falling short because Tamu runs it for 5, and then Keith Ford on a pitch, it gets pitched out to him, and it's a touchdown. And then there's a drop on the double pass for the 2-point conversion, and Jonathan Hayes is like, You could have ran it, which he should have ran it. I think it's I can't remember who. I think it's Pearson L. who was throwing it. The tight end could have caught it, but at the same time, I think Pearson L. It would have been a safer bet to run it in. But I'm like, I'm not the coach. I'm just agreeing with the coach. I'm agreeing with the coach, I should say. And then the half ultimately ended up being 17-3 Battlehawks. Some of my things for halftime. Seattle needs to contain Tamu both on the ground and the air. And the Seattle offense needs to get out of being lackluster on its execution. And they sort of accomplish this, or they think they will accomplish this, by benching Brand Silvers at half for B.J. Daniels. And then there's a big run for a first down. And then I believe both those were Daniels. He just keeps running. And then a throw is dropped by Reynolds, and that ultimately means punt time for the Dragons. But Daniels was moving. He was running, man. It was like a Lamar Jackson-esque offense in a way. It was kind of cool to see Seattle, because I kind of like Seattle. I find them interesting. But then Tamu, not to be outdone, does run it on second down. And then he throws a way too high third down. And the drive stalls out as a 3-down. But then Daniels gets to work, has a 15-yard run, throws it to Ben Johnson. He runs it to the 3, and then Keith Farrow slams it in for a touchdown. And he runs it for the 1-point attempt. It's 10-17 Battlehawks. I'm getting a little sway here. I'm like, oh my god, the Dragons actually have a chance at this. And then Tamu to Pearson L on a giant first down throw. Ends up being stalling out after that, and it ends up being a 38-yard field goal by Taylor Russolino. And it's 20-10 Battlehawks. End of the third is still the exact same score, 20-10 Battlehawks. But then Daniels has a big throw to Austin Podol for a first down, and he has an over-the-middle touchdown to Rodriguez, and they go for a 3-point attempt, which ends up being no good because Moore drops it. And then Tamu to Mumphrey on third down makes a difference, and then he throws it to Mumphrey again to make even more of a difference. But then they're stuffed on first, second, and third. And then Russolino kicks another field goal. And it's 23-16 Battlehawks. Daniels runs up for 13. Then he proceeds to throw it behind Austin Podol. And then Gardner sneaks past the Battlehawks defense for a first down. The drive and the game ultimately ends in B.J. Daniels' interception, which is picked off by Will Hill. An interception. No, here's how I should say a Daniel Stroud, which is ultimately picked off by Will Hill. Not an interception picked off by Will Hill. Whoo, boy. So there are some of my final notes at the end of the game. Seattle has an actual offensive pulse with B.J. Daniels. Seattle's defense was pretty good at adjusting in the second half. Battlehawks' first half explosion was enough to win. They need to not stall so much in the second half. Tua was overall pretty awesome. And the Battlehawks D adjusted to the adjustment quarterback just enough to win. Like, just enough. I could have very easily seen this game going the other way. One of the big differences was third down conversions. The Dragons had 30%, while the Battlehawks had 47%. Of course, they only had 10 of them, while the Battlehawks had 17. So that probably made a little bit of a difference, too. I mean, the Battlehawks overall just ran so many more plays. I mean, 392 yards to 253, 74 to 42, and 23 first downs to 11. So that should say the story right there. Yeah. As for the Battlehawks and Dragons, both are decently penalized. I mean, 35 yards, 55 yards. It's not Guardians class bad. It's not perfect either, but fine. Both teams went 1 for 2 on extra points, though, which was interesting to see. All field goals were good. And there were 4 quarterback hits by Dragons and 3 by the Battlehawks, which I found kind of interesting. Now let's get into some individual stats. B.J. Daniels had 7 attempts for 84 yards, which is the most. Cam Farrow had 5 for 26 and a touchdown, which was the only touchdown rushing. B.J. Daniels went 5 for 10 passing, 100 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He got half those yards on 1 throw, which was, I guess, okay. Brandon Silvers went 4 for 10, 27 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, and Keith Reynolds went 1 for 2 for 1 yard. No touchdowns, no picks. So I found this kind of interesting from a statistical standpoint because Daniels was moving the ball a lot better, and it's pretty much because of his ground. It's kind of like the Lamar Jackson, Joe Flacco thing. Well, Lamar wasn't throwing it particularly greatly. He was just running it. I'm talking about his first year, not his second year. Second year, he was throwing it pretty good most of the time. As for some receiving stats, Moore had 1 reception for 57 yards. Johnson had 1 for 21. And then the touchdown to Rodriguez was 1 reception, 10-yard, 1 touchdown day. Defensively for the Dragons, the 1 sack was by Tazy. He also had 2 quarterback hits and a tackle for a loss. Frazier also had a quarterback hit and a tackle for a loss. Sutton had 2 tackles for a loss. Smith, 2 tackles for a loss. Inca, 1 tackle for a loss. Morgan, 1 tackle for a loss. Thompson, 1 tackle for a loss. And Mapunga, 1 tackle for a loss. Steven Johnson had 1 pass defense in addition to having 8 tackles, which led the team. Clark also had pass defense, which I'm pretty sure I mentioned his pass defense. And yeah, that was the Dragons' stats. So let's get into the individual St. Louis Battlehawks stats. Tamu had 16 rushing attempts for 63 yards. Michael had 12 for 27, and Matt Jones had 15 for 20, and Keith Ford had 3 for 23 and a touchdown. So during the game, I didn't really notice just how bad they looked from a statistical standpoint because they were moving the ball down the field, which is kind of our, hey, stats don't matter, because I'm looking at stats, I'm like, these stats are freaking terrible. But, I mean, Matt Jones' longest run is 8 yards. He got stuffed on some of those. That's probably why his yards aren't so good. Tamu had a 14-yard run, but he had good stats. Michael had a 7-yard run. I didn't really realize how bad they were statistically for their running backs until I looked. I'm like, oh. Because they were moving the ball through most of the game. Now, Jordan Tamu, in addition to his 63 yards, went 20 of 27, 264 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. So he's pretty good, you know. I thought there's an opportunity for him to be picked, but, you know, that belongs in the recap, not the stats. Now, in terms of receiving, Jermon Pearson L. had 5 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Mumfries had 2 receptions, 51 yards. Riley had 3 receptions, 46 yards. Washington had 4 receptions, 41 yards. And yeah, that was that. I mean, there wasn't anything else crazy receiving for either team besides Austin Portal being held to 1 reception, 1 yard for the Dragons, which I didn't really feel was worth mentioning. Now, in terms of stats for the Battlehawks, Sales had 1 quarterback hit, 1 tackle for a loss. Clark had 1 quarterback hit. Lambert had 1 quarterback hit. Payne was kept in check. Will Hill had 1 interception, 1 pass defense. Nelson had pass defense, and Robinson had a tackle for a loss. So overall, statistically, this wasn't really impressive by either team. I just was way more impressed by the actual gameplay. So anyway, guys, yeah, final score for that was 16-23 Battlehawks win for the LA Wildcats and the New York Guardians. It was 17-14 Guardians W, which makes the Wildcats 1-3, the Guardians 2-2, the Dragons 1-3, and the St. Louis Battlehawks 3-1. So yeah, I might put a timestamp in the video in the comment section saying, hey, if you just want to know the scores and the records, go to 31 minutes in the video, which sounds kind of bad, but it's like I like doing my recap and analysis more than the saying scores and records, because any team can beat a team on any given Sunday. That is kind of I'd like to close with that, actually. So anyway, guys, thank you all for watching my Saturday recap. Like, comment, subscribe, check the Twitter in the description below if you want to contact me or just be like, okay, what's this jackass tweeting? So have a nice day and goodbye.